Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Welcome to the show. It's Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. How are you, Johnny?
That's
this
me.
Fine day. Yes. Wearing a Joan Jett shirt. Is that from a recent...
It is. I saw
is.
Joan Jett last Sunday.
It's great. Yeah, she's so great. She's super
delightful.
great.
And she's a huge Baltimore Orioles fan, so I wore a Baltimore Orioles shirt.
Uh-huh.
And she saw me and pointed to me.
Oh, and deciding you suck up. It's disgusting. I'm disgusted.
I met her back in '99 when my band opened up for her, and she is small.
Yes, that's your reference of what constitutes...
You know what? She's not that small because actually they had to get an apple box for Michael J. Fox when they were in that movie together.
Yes, she is diminutive, but not extremely so. You are just a tall drink of water.
Yeah. She's very sweet and shy, and she signed my Light of Day soundtrack album.
Oh, man. You just roundhousing her right from the top.
Oh.
You know? Yeah. It's like me showing up with my Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park VHS at the meet and greet.
Kind of. She got really good reviews for that, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She was fantastic. Anyways, welcome to the show. We could take this off the rails. And
Here we go. Pop culture references.
My friend, I look forward to the day when we can pop culture reference off into the darkness and we don't have to white knuckle this country's response to Donald Trump anymore. And the rest of it. And imagine politics going back to being boring. You know what I mean?
I'm waiting for it.
Wouldn't that be nice? Oh, I wish we had this kind of like back and forth vitriol over sort of sports and I don't know, whatever the current monstrosity is, 90 Day Fiance or some nonsense. Anyways, I look forward to it, and as does the chat, who is among us today. And but I have to say, if I may, we have a lovely group of people here, and we're definitely here to deal with this stuff. It's super fun, and the nice thing about it is that these days there's a lot of popcorn to be consumed watching the Republicans kind of chew each other. I mean, for crying out loud, Marjorie Taylor Greene has been ejected and then not ejected and then re-ejected and then truly ejected from the Freedom Caucasians and in the House.
Freedom Caucasians?
Yes, that's that. I don't know if you're familiar with that group, but they're...
I think I've heard of the Freedom Caucus. Is that one of those official subgroups, or is it just
no? It's my golden idol for the bag of sand swap out, and you can decide on your own which one is which. But yeah, she was kicked out of the Freedom Caucasians for calling Lauren Boebert the B word. And by the way, speaking of diminutive, calling her a little B word on the House floor in an argument about whose failed Joe Biden impeachment amendment, however they were trying to enter it into the record,
Which
would fail.
Lamer?
Would fail first, because Marjorie Taylor Greene has filed hers, but it has never been able to be brought to the floor for a vote. But Boebert used a procedural trick to get hers to actually be brought up for a vote, which, you know, again...
It passed with flying colors. Joe Biden's now impeached.
Yeah, it's like world's sharpest butter knife is what they're fighting for. You know what I mean? Or how dull can your knife be before it is only good for butter is effectively what the argument was about. And in that argument, two people who are supposedly going to be the bane of Democrats' existence in many ways, women... You know, women, you're supposed to believe them. You gotta believe the women. And they're believing them, but they're not. The idea that they were gonna, you know, sort of Sarah Palin their way, you know, in a front against the Democratic Party. We've got women too, and you're gonna mock them for being dumb and tradcon and whatever, and they're traditional conservative women. Who you know, till death do us part. Both of them recently divorced. Both of them involving cheating. And then, of course, in line with those, I guess, those traditional conservative values, Boebert's about to be a grandmother Oh, Hal Vickery, thank you so much for duct tape to put over
Oh,
MTG's mouth. Oh my
Hal
God.
Vickery, Lisa Mia Moore.
Oh,
Epsom,
lovely people. Thank you for your
amazing
support.
people.
Yes, and that's the way the show stays on the air, by the way. So think about super chatting. Go to infotainmentwars.com and subscribe because we have crested over.
And there is trickle down.
There is. That's right. Well, no. I actually don't. We don't have whales. We don't have any trickle down in that regard. We have we're bottom up and middle out. That's the it's a Biden economy over here at Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide. It really is. Ironically or not ironically enough, we'll figure that out later. But thank you guys for your support. And we will applaud you even more later. We've got Philip Ittner's going to join us in the second hour. Lots to talk about. Not the least of which is, of course, the big news of cluster munitions being given by the U.S. to Ukraine. All the talk of them being about, oh dear God, they can wreck civilian areas and blah, blah, as if there are any where they're going to be landing is another question. But the primary thing is that one of the other things cluster munitions are good for, and we'll talk about this with our dear friend Philip Ittner, is clearing minefields because they trigger cascading explosions. And if you have a bunch of mines, it will just set them off across a wide area, about 5 football fields. It will make them all blow up at once. And that's that, which I would say is the primary reason to use them on the front currently. Where, strategically aiming them at other places, maybe not, but for that purpose, cool. We will talk more about that. We'll talk more about how Prigozhin is apparently able to walk around Russia right now in a way that just kind of amazes everyone. The guy just did a coup, and he's traipsing all over the place. So who is actually in charge in that dump right now? It's kind of amazing. We'll get to that as well in the next hour. I mean, argue differently. Explain to me how Russia is in a dump right now. And also, for all the people commenting on my tank top, it's just very hot here. And yeah.
You're distracting the masses, Hal.
It happens. I don't know whether, and I told you this when we were coming in, I don't know whether it's a massive fail as a parent or a massive win. People have to describe, discuss it in the chat. That's how I'll fire up engagement. Is if your 12-year-old son quotes Con Air when he sees you in a tank top. Put the bunny back in the box. Why didn't you put the bunny
when he said it
back in the box? Why didn't you put the bunny back in the box? We'll also talk a little bit about RFK Jr. Seemingly stealing more votes from Trump world than he ever is going to steal from the Democratic side of things. Kind of a bit of a backfire might be the fact that all of his media cheerleaders are from people who were calling themselves the intellectual dark web 3 years ago. In the that kind of stuff. So for the record, fascinating storylines. Now, the biggest thing that happened this week, and I covered this yesterday, and if anybody wants to go back, we have it broken down in chapters, or will. Yesterday, there was a reveal in the world of the Hunter Biden saga of Biden corrupt crime family crimey crimes. And a fellow, after the failed quote-unquote whistleblowers from the IRS came forward and kind of petered out, just kind of showed up and under oath went, and that was that. The big question was, they were referencing a couple of specific people when they were like, they're telling the tale of the intrigue, of the spycraft, of the 007, as Mr. Dickman, our history teacher at New Trier, used to say, 007 stories.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Nice
Where thank you. The storyline being that this guy showed up and he offered some dirt on the Bidens to the DOJ, and the DOJ and I don't remember who was president in 2019, dispatched about
me either.
6 or 10 people to go over there and interview the guy on orders from whoever was running the joint at the time. I don't remember. And because one of my favorite points is this guy going, why would the DOJ send 6 people over if I wasn't, if I didn't have valid information? Well, largely because Joe Biden's the only guy that Trump feared running against, and he was right to have that fear, and that he was He was dispatching, Hoth drones all over the galaxy to try and find dirt everywhere he could. Just, and in that process, basically chased down every lame lead there was. Now, why would they send all these people over there? And then somehow, when he's like, I got all this dirt, I know the money they got from CEFC, the Chinese energy company that is tied to the Chinese military. And just the sheer fact that somebody who's in business with the Bidens got some money from a deal that didn't happen but might have from CEFC means that the Bidens are completely compromised, right? That's just being tacitly attached to it, 3 people away, just 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon makes you a potential spy for the Chinese. Why would they not take this guy seriously in that case? Well, it might be that guy worked as a senior advisor for CEFC for 4 years. So if somebody who is 3 tiers away from CEFC is a criminal and is crimey criminaling on behalf of the crimey criminals, if that person is if you can get a whiff of it on you, a guy who worked for them as a senior advisor for 4 years might be a little closer to the fire than they were comfortable with in that regard. Also, he's being charged with arms dealing on behalf of the Chinese government, dumping weapons in Kenya. But how's that Belt and Road Initiative going? So, really weird story. This guy sends a video after being, on the run, and he's the mystery witness. Sends a video to Miranda Devine, the woman who wrote the work of fiction on the Hunter Biden laptop story, and to the New York Post where she works. And this 14-minute video, which basically, he whines about being public enemy number 1 and explains why he will not be testifying under oath anytime soon, because he essentially made a break for it. He's on the run against international arms trade and FARA violations. Along with, by the way, he was arrested, or the arrest warrant was issued to him, and then he bugged off afterwards. The story's a little smoky, I got to say, around that. But he was in Cyprus when they came after him. He was, and he says that evidence that that there's no charges because why didn't they grab him while he was in Israel? As opposed to the idea that he was in Israel and then he found out they were coming for him and he tried to bug off to Cyprus because supposedly you're safe there if you're an international weapons trading, gun running,
right on.
Whatever. That's one of the places you go, actually. You go to Cyprus if you're trying to avoid that stuff. And it didn't quite work. So stack that on the questions. We got to take a break. Stack that on the pile of questions along with, if adrenochrome works, why does everyone who allegedly uses it look like crap? And if Donald Trump was the savior of child baby-eating cabal people or whatever, why were their children freed from catacombs under the White House after he was president, not when he started? There's so many questions, and I'm just asking them. That's all I'm doing.
You think he'd go in there and
clear the place
like,
out right
"Get
away.
these kids out of here."
Yeah, what? Look at all these enslaved children hanging upside down, being drained of adrenochrome. I'll get right on that. I got some golf. I don't know what. We'll be back
I have to
right
undo
after this.
everything Obama did except this.
Except that part, which is like, hey, I like some of the furniture and the
these kids in
adrenochrome
the
farm.
basement.
Right, sure, that makes total sense. Johnny? Thank you for being here. And all right, anyways, we'll be back right after this. This is the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll be back before I swear is the thing. I'm almost this close.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay, so one of the roots of the entire whistleblower thing is, again, I'm going to twist my brain in knots trying to figure out what in the ever-loving heck they are talking about. But apparently, the Chinese government, not the people themselves, the government, let's be very specific, the CCP after Joe Biden stopped being vice president and had no plans on running for president ever again because old, decided this is the perfect time to engage with this guy and set up an influence peddling scheme where we will pay him to do things in government for us because he is A, no longer in government, and B, the people who are in government could not possibly be more hostile to him and his former boss, Barack Obama. Like, why that guy? Okay, but anyways, I'm beginning to think they might have gone after Hunter Biden because they were like, wow, this guy, before he was brought into Burisma, the place was a trap for money, and all the money ended up in Russia. And then after this guy shows up, it's actually being spent building pipelines. Weird. The people's actual investments actually went somewhere. Nutty. It could have been, well, that's another conversation for another time. But the argument is that the Biden administration is unnecessarily and eagerly falling over themselves, jumping through their shirt to help the CCP destroy the dollar and America. That's that. I mean, am I describing the general argument fairly well, Johnny Million? Is that?
Oh, definitely.
Is that? It's kind of okay. So here's my question: if the United States, the dollar is dying because that's Biden's plan, and he has been put in place to help the Chinese overtake the U.S. economy and destroy the dollar, then how come the exact opposite is happening? And why then, if the exact opposite is happening, is Donald Trump, and arguably, I guess, Marianne Williamson too, arguing that when they get in office, and by the way, equal possibility for both people, when they get in office, they are going to do an economic 180. They are going to turn around this economy away from, 3.5% unemployment and wage increases and all the things that have been happening. They're like, no, America's going in the wrong direction. We need to turn this thing back
all these
around.
Toxic policies that are destroying America.
Infrastructure
all these jobs.
Gone. Smart electrical grid gone.
Niedermeyer.
Right, gone. Bueller. So here's this is an article in Bloomberg. China's economic woes are multiplying, and Xi Jinping has no easy fix. I would argue, as I have before, that there's not only no easy fix, there is no actual fix. There is no way that you fix this because all of the options are equally catastrophic to just letting your economy die. And it takes, you have to understand, some of this is stuff that Xi Jinping inherited when he came into office because
I'm so
bless
sorry,
you.
Hal.
No, I was waiting for it. The Democrat, he's allergic to math. It's a thing. I'm going to start.
Yeah,
you knew I was going to get into
it. He starts doing this arithmetic, and I lose it.
Yeah, make your eyes start watering, and then it's bad.
Yeah,
but
that's bad.
Some of it he inherited in terms of like the one-child policy and the death of the Chinese demographic. Like their collapsing population and all that stuff is an unfixable problem, quite frankly. And that was already in place when he came in. But the weird part is that he came in and didn't seem to mind and didn't even start trying to fix it until, quite frankly, Russia started to try and fix their collapsing demographic. And then they did a, hey, wait up, guys, just like they did with the Soviet Union back in Mao's time on policies. Very weird. It's like a kid on the school, on the playground at the schoolyard, just running after the kid they think is popular, which is very odd. So anyways, they didn't do anything about it for a long time. And then Xi Jinping instituted what they call the 3 red lines because they were looking at the problem that was off in the distance, but they were definitely recognizing there is a problem in the real estate market. 30% of their entire economy is based in real estate. Real estate, by the way, that no one will ever live in. So what makes it real estate? I think it's just buildings, but we'll get to that. Go look up Chinese ghost cities if you haven't already. It's amazing. And I was over there. I saw them in person. It's stunning. It's bizarre. It's as weird as you think it would be. It's as post-apocalyptic and odd as you could possibly imagine. And I've walked around in them, and I've seen people squatting in like 9 of the apartments out of thousands in rows of buildings. It's just weird. And that's, they saw that problem coming, and they're like, we need to curtail this. And part of it is because of debt. Most people in China cannot invest their money in anything but real estate. And so once that was a possibility, and even then you can't own the real estate, you can only lease it for 99 years, that kind of stuff. And it's still you're leasing it to the government and paying them for the right to not own the property. It's very curious. It's a mess. But in that process, people were like, okay, well, if I'm making any money at all, that's the only place I can invest it. So I'm just going to dump that there. And quickly it became a third of their economy. And again, empty buildings. And then under Xi Jinping, they were worried about this. They were worried that married couples, especially, those are the ones with money, were dumping all their money into these, into these extra properties for their kids, by the way, that they arguably didn't have. And they needed to have, if they were a boy, if a boy wants to get married, he's got to have a house. So they're investing in these properties for the boy. So the Chinese government said, okay, married couples, individuals can invest in a bunch of stuff, but married couples can only have one property, which started a wave of divorces across the entire country, and couples just staying together after they get divorced, and then they just stay together and pretend they're not married anymore so they can continue to throw good money after bad into these property things. And it didn't do anything to solve the problem. If anything, it made it worse because it drove some of the funding, the economic activity underground. They created sort of a secondary market of shells and payments through family members and all this stuff. Just nuts. Weirdest choice and most obvious blowback you could expect. Well, China is experiencing something right now that most countries aren't dealing with, which is deflation. And that while, we're dealing with possible rate hikes by the Fed and all that kind of stuff because our economy is sort of balanced against reality, meaning output and supply and demand and all that kind of stuff instead of a pretty rock like it used to be. The Chinese government dictates what the money is worth every Monday. And then they change it every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And they basically say, hey, today this is the trade point, whether it's worth it or not. Which is fine inside your own country. But if you're BSing the rest of the world, they start to, after a while, after the obvious investment potential for quote unquote a billion people starts to dry up, they start to question whether their money is safe. And the exit of funds from China has hit the highest ever. It is absolutely catastrophic. And yet, the story from the Republicans is Joe Biden is a Chinese missile pointed at the heart of the Constitution, and you can prove it by how well China is doing. They're going to eat our lunch. And maybe 8 years ago you could have believed this, but now, and I've been screaming about it from the rooftops for years now, but people are finally coming around to the fact.
And I've been screaming, get down from there, Hal.
That's true. You have. I appreciate it. Well, you say jump. I don't know if that's the same
when
thing.
I say jump, you'll be fine. I mean. That means get down, you'll hurt yourself.
That's true. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. What was Biden actually bribed to do if it ain't happening? What's the quote? Nobody can tell me.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've been asking. I have been hunting and gathering, as it were, all over the place, trying to figure out what in the world China is getting in return for their massive Biden bribes. I can't find it. And I hope in the chat room we have some folks, maybe some trolls that are out there who can explain it. The only thing that James Comer was able to come up with this week is that the Biden administration changed the name of the China Initiative, but kept the policy. So the China Initiative was something that Trump did when they were dealing with possible intellectual property theft from labs at universities and that kind of stuff. And the U.S. government has been pushing back on this stuff because, quite frankly, lawsuits and the legal protections afforded to these labs and to these schools and all this stuff they get mad when their stuff is stolen. They get very upset. And so they're always pressuring the government, no matter who the administration is. They don't care. They don't just go, Trump's in charge, so I don't care if they steal my stuff. It doesn't work that way. And they certainly don't feel that way under Biden or Obama or George W. Bush. And all that's really happening is that people are getting more aware of it. Over time, they got more aware that this was sort of a trap. And so that really hit a head during the Trump administration, but right about the time he was trying to make his deal with them, his trade deal. So they were kind of whispers about it and the like, and there was this tit for tat. And during the trade issue, he was like, "Well, you can't steal our stuff, so we'll call it the China Initiative, like it's the China Syndrome or something like that." They're specifically tacking this on, and a lot of folks pointed out that it was the CCP and their operatives, not just Chinese students in general, and it's a little racist to just blame the people, as it were. And the Biden administration agreed and just didn't call it that because that was the problem, and just went, if somebody's stealing stuff, we don't care where they're from. They can't steal intellectual property from the United States, and we will go after you. But according to James Comer, by taking the name China Initiative off of it, that was worth billions to the Chinese government. I don't get it. I'm trying. I'm so trying to wrap my head around this. But that was the only one he could come up with. And then they unveil this Gal Luft guy. Gal Luft is the Israeli professor who contacted the Trump DOJ and said, "I've got dirt on the Bidens, meet you in Brussels." Showed up, and his proof was, "I worked at CEFC, and here's the files from CEFC, which is a completely criminal organization run by the Chinese government. So says I. And I should know I worked there for 4 years, and I'm still paid by them." Somebody was just asking about in the sort of quid pro quo that's going on with, or the tit for tat, as it were, between China and the U.S. about was it germanium and somebody? Well, I'll scroll back to this, but and gallium. These two elements that we use, these metals that we use to make a lot of stuff. Both of them are produced, if I'm not mistaken, during the processing of aluminum. The only reason we get a lot from China is because they are lackadaisical with their environmental standards, and so they make a lot more of it, and so they can make it a lot cheaper, which has been the game for a long time. If you factor in the cost of losing all your intellectual property, it's actually more expensive. Hey, so we actually can get it from our own sites. There are aluminum plants in the United States, not just the one put there by Mitch McConnell with his deal with Russia a long time ago, but we have other plants where they produce it as well. We'll be fine. As a matter of fact, there's an article that came out this week about how every time China tries to deny everyone a mineral that they have control over, people just go find it someplace else. All they have is the cheapest price. And so when people tell you this, and this is a big thing for Fox News, if you're watching Fox News, they will tell you, we get 98% of our, red kryptonite from China. And they'll say this kind of on and on and on. We get 90% of it from there. Well, the reason we get 90% of it from there is because the U.S. doesn't buy it. Companies buy it. U.S. companies buy it from China because it's cheap. But it's not cheap like $5 versus $95 a kilogram or something. It's $5 versus $6.50 a kilogram. And if there's shipping problems, or you can't get stuff out of China, or there's other issues, like you don't want to be seen as, if the red kryptonite you're using in your blastotron is made or processed by Uyghur slave labor, and it's a bad look for your company, then the $6.50 is worth it, because the cost benefit analysis of being seen as pro-slavery in a lot of quarters is just way higher. So let's see. This is this is just the reality of a marketplace, not because this stuff is hard to find in particular. There are rare earth minerals. Very few of them are actually minerals and rare. So don't let shorthand in the news media affect you like that. Now, one of the primary issues that we are definitely currently extracting from China, like extricating ourselves from China. There's a giant business and governmental exfil from China right now. So all the stuff about we're not decoupling, we're de-risking and de-leveraging is politispeak, and it's why the Chinese were very angry with Blinken when he came over, but are like tiptoeing around Janet Yellen because they somehow think that they can, I don't know, mess with foreign, like American, like U.S. dollar reserves by playing nice with her like she's stupid. It's sexist, it's dumb, but the important thing is that it's not working. The United States currently, and there is, I will tell you, there is genuinely nothing that the Biden administration could do to stop this process long term. It is already like all the other companies don't feel safe. The next COVID that's possibly going to come in the world will definitely come from China in their estimation, since the last 3 pandemics that got off there from swine flu to avian flu originated in China. It's a problem. And the lockdown policies and the economic, the stringent economic rules there just make it bad for business. Also, labor costs in Mexico are cheaper.
Yep.
And workers in Mexico can come to the United States really easily. This might shock people, and get educated on high-tech jobs and go right back home, and they're fine with that when they're actually functioning factories. The manufacturing in Mexico is on a massive upswing, and it's cheaper to build your factory in Mexico than it is in China right now, this very day, today. And that is not going to change. There's nothing that China has planned policy-wise or can do, even if they've started to, that will change that. They do not have the young workers. They do not have, and even the workers they do have that are the right age for it aren't interested or can't find a job because because everybody's leaving. The youth unemployment, 19 to 25-year-olds in China right now, is somewhere in the order of 24 to 26%.
That's high.
Yeah. If that was in the United States or any European country, there would be people with torches outside of whatever the halls of power were demanding the person step down. Any prime minister, president, whatever. That would be the rallying cry. 26% youth unemployment in a country, by the way, that one of their only ways out is youth purchasing power. Young people coming up, getting some extra spending money, and spending it inside the country. I have an image up on the screen, and it's kind of like one of the charts you'll see from the international climate committees, where they point out, like, okay, if we do this, the temperature will be like this, and if we do this, worst case scenario, 3 degrees. Best case scenario, half a degree. That kind of idea. And they plot it out past a certain point. The trajectory of China's economy versus GDP, and these guys are still operating on the idea that China's GDP is actually what they say it is, which I call BS on it 100%. There's no way China has an $18 trillion economy. I've been there. It's absurd. The whole thing, China in its current state is the town in Blazing Saddles. It is just, it's an old fake frontier movie set. the entire place right now. It's horrifying. And I feel for the people that are there who are going to be on the receiving end of this idiocy for quite some time. But even at the sort of median projection, it's terrible. It's, and again, they're operating on favorable numbers. So I ask again, what is the benefit for China to having Joe Biden in office at all? And why would they have a guy that they paid for 20 years to promote China and to be a senior advisor for CEFC? Why would that guy come out of the woodwork because he's a concerned citizen and he's got to stop Joe Biden from becoming president because because Joe Biden might be compromised by the Chinese, who that guy works for and has for 20 years, directly and indirectly, like under the table and above. It's crazy. Like, it's so obvious. The dude wrote a book called De-Dollarization, promoting the rise of the BRICS currency.
What currency?
The BRICS currency. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And the idea that they're going to have their own cryptocurrency. Or get this, Johnny Million. Wait, you're going to love this. This is my favorite part. That of those countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and by the way, you can kind of take India out right now because India is way more favorable to the United States. There's a reason why state dinners and all that stuff happened. And it's a massive, massive movement of human beings and technology, and the growth of India will be this is a hinge point for a positive change in India like probably never before. That said, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and the idea is, and maybe you can explain this to me, Johnny May, is that those countries with all their disparate desires and interests in the world, both security, economic, cultural, will add to their group Iran and Saudi Arabia. And those folks, that would be BRICS Plus, are somehow going to agree on a new currency amongst themselves, like the euro, but they're all gonna sit around a table and agree on whose currency it will be pegged to. What? Where do you see China letting
Can you
Russia
have it both ways?
No, you cannot have it both ways. And you know what their biggest the biggest movement they had, and this was last year, we had all the BRICS talk, everybody from Russell Brand to Jimmy Dore, the dollar's over, the petrodollar. I would like to present to you the concept of the petro ruble and the petro yuan, and you'll realize how stupid the entire conversation is. But on top of that, the theory is that these folks are going to agree to, create this. And the only movement they actually made last year when they sat together was to peg it to the US dollar. How do you stop the US dollar from being the reserve currency of the world by pegging your brand new silly money to the US dollar? Because
you don't want to take a big hit.
Well, you're now responsible for keeping the dollar strong. Because if the dollar weakens, so does your monopoly money. Again, there are a bunch of folks somehow that felt like arguing this in stuff that, papers that are normally kind of, I guess, have a sober take on this stuff. That was just, it's absurd. It's so idiotic. It boggled the mind. We got to take another break, and we're going to check in with the chat. And thank you guys for your support. Patreon.com/Hal Sparks. I think I'm the only person who dove into the Gal Luft video on the scale that I did, 2 hours plus, breaking down who this guy is and what he's been selling for years. And the fact that he is anti-dollar and pro-BRICS magic money and has been arguing for China's ascension and that America's time is done and that democracies are crap. That's the guy. That is who the Republicans have hinged their entire Biden crime family case on. And I don't know. I just find that mind-boggling. There will not be enough popcorn for 2023. I've said it. I'll say it again. We'll be back. We'll be back.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
And you know, I've been scrolling through, you know, the stories, just kind of showing, you know, and obviously mixed in with the, you know, the stories about Hunter Biden and the whistleblower and the whistly blower and whatnot, are speeches by this guy, Gal Luft, about how the dollar is dead. Long live the BRICS currency. China is on the rise. Democracies are terrible because the number of people we looked into his dialogue on democracy at the Global Governance Institution, which, by the way, Johnny Million, can we just form our own like highfalutin think tank thing? I think
we already have.
Yeah, I mean, give it a nice like BS name.
We got to brand it.
Yeah, it's got to be like global policy security initiative.
It's got to have something to do with the tank top too.
Yes. Yeah. Bunny box.
But bunny box.
But bunny put the bunny back in the box. So
for your bunny box.
For your bunny box. I have to say that there. I'm still waiting, and by the way, this guy, this Gal Luft dude, is not going to testify under oath. This isn't going to happen, and not just because he's on the run or something like that. Because I got news for you. There are all kinds of ways that the House Appropriations Committee and Congress can send people out through, you know, a negotiation with the guy's lawyers to have a conversation under oath with the guy where he, you know, spills everything he has on the record under oath. And by the way, in a way that warns him about, you know, contempt in this particular situation. By the way, in a way that you did not see, you know, them in the interview with him in Belgium, for example, and why they had it in Belgium and why he went to sort of neutral territories to do these things. Also because I think Rudy just wanted to go to Brussels for a couple of days. And Marcus Isaac is the dude even American citizen. He's a resident of Israel, allegedly an American citizen, but an employee of the Chinese government for something at least 15 years. During which time, by the way, he's been giving talks at Google and other places about the ascension of China this whole time. Okay, so again, I am asking anybody, explain to me what the quote, look, in terms of quid pro quo, when we got back, you know, when that phrase, when quid pro quo came back into the zeitgeist because of Donald Trump's attempts to collude with Russia, or, you know, see if you set up a back channel where they would help him out in Russia if you're listening and all that kind of stuff. He had his sort of follow-up where he was with Zelensky, where he was trying to get something, you know, get him to, he was basically saying, I'll send these javelins and stuff, but you've got to start this investigation. It doesn't have to, you don't even have to follow through with it, by the way, which goes back to the time of Victor Shokin. Because the whole point of Victor Shokin was, and this is the part where they're like, this guy was investigating Burisma. Right, but he stalled it. He stopped it. It was sitting there. It wasn't moving forward. They weren't going after Zlotchevsky or whatever, the guy who ran Burisma. They just let it happen. He wasn't going after anybody. He would just kind of write up the paper and stick it on a shelf, and that was that. The problem was they weren't following through on going after corruption. The new guy did. So, same thing in this particular instance, but with the Zelensky call, Trump says, I'll send these things, which Congress had already allotted, had already voted on. He'd already signed the appropriations bill to send the stuff, so he had no right to hold it back. But because it was an act of Congress, he was artificially interfering with. It was not a discretionary bill or a discretionary funds that bought these weapons to send to them. The quo was, and the quid pro quo, was, you do this investigation for me, I'll give you the weapons. And the delay of the weapons themselves, in and of itself, was actually a benefit to Russia. But and he tried to hold on to it as long as he possibly could, literally up to the point where the next day they were going to they would have to vote on it again. It would become a big story. So he literally was right down to the wire. But the expectation was, and people were in the State Department even were in contact, didn't know what Trump was doing, didn't know about the phone call at that time, and said, the stuff's on its way. Don't worry about it. So at that point, Zelensky didn't really have a fear that it wasn't going to arrive. And this weird conversation with the president and him sending Rudy Giuliani over to strong-arm him, it didn't seem to pressure him. And he was looking at the polls, and it was obvious that, Trump was on his heels, but he had to be verbally nice with this guy because he's a lunatic and an egomaniac. And so if he doesn't, if Trump managed to pull it out in the election, you can't be on his bad side, all that stuff. So, that was a quid pro quo. Really clear. I'll give you these weapons, which I don't have the right to hold back, but I think you don't know that. And I'll send Rudy over with direct instructions. And in return, you will start this investigation into Joe Biden, my political opponent, right before the election, and you'll announce it. You'll have you'll go to a podium with your prosecutor and say, we're still looking into this, because we think there's a there. I want another Comey moment. That was the thing that put me over the top. I need another Hillary Clinton email. There might be more to this kind of thing, and everything's a reboot. So do this. That was the quid pro quo. That's pretty darn clear. What's the quo around the Bidens? What is it? Because if it's just money for money, then this sounds like business deals with former politicians, in which case you're going to have to talk to everybody. And you should start with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Two people who made $2 billion deals and have basically left the country, insofar as I know. They've been back in the country twice in the last year or something like that. They're gone. They've packed up. They're running this whole thing from someplace else, and they're letting Dad and the brothers burn it down at home. But so far, the biggest problem Republicans have, and this is why Comer is being pushed to the front and Jim Jordan has backed off because they don't mind if he makes an ass out of himself, is because there's no quo they can point to. There isn't one. But in every case, in all of Trump's cases, there's a massive, obvious quid pro quo, transactional, from by nature. It's in his blood. It's in his, it's in his personality. He
thinks he's doing business.
Right. His self-image is predicated on quid pro quo. He couldn't even do it if somebody was going to give him the favor. If he'd want to turn it into something. But then again, please tell me again how Paul Manafort worked for free and that Gal Luft just felt like he needed to be a citizen because he's afraid for America. Because he just can't hold back anymore. I can't either. We got to take a break. When we come back, Philip Ittner will be joining us from Ukraine. I have a lot of questions for him. So does our chat. Chat room, get your questions ready. Send them over to Johnny Million, and we'll ask him. And I mean, there's a lot going on there. So we'll be back.